Coach, man, where you from? Tell me where it all starts. Where is Coach Shane Cowherd from? The beginning.
Well, I was born in Oklahoma, but
Right.
I grew up in Michigan, around just north of the Grand Rapids area. So was there all the way up through high school. Had a great opportunity to be able to play with some good teams up there in high school, and then came down here collegiately. Was at Southern Nazarene. Got myself into coaching at Southern Nazarene for a couple of years, and then got into the high school ranks, and now I'm just an old man.
So is it fair to say that you found your niche early? Did you know you wanted to coach fairly early on, or is it something that just kind of fell in your lap?
I think so. It was something that I think I fought for a while. My mom was an educator, and I think that I didn't necessarily really want to go into education early on. I had thoughts and hopes of maybe law school or something along those lines, and just the further I got into the college scene, the more that I just felt more and more and more that I wanted to make, the game part of what I do, and I just love teaching. A lot of times, we talk about coaches, right? But education is important to me, and I'm an educator first and foremost, and I think that helps me hopefully be the kind of coach that I want to be as well.
Sure. Did it ever take a while for you to merge those two worlds of coaching and teaching? Because it took me a few years before I understood that they actually go hand in hand. Did you ever have a moment, or was it always the same to you from beginning to end?
I think I was blessed because, once again, my mom was an educator,
Yeah.
and was a volleyball coach, and coached for a number of state championships in volleyball in Michigan, and so I got to see it in that regard and see it work, and so I don't think it was too tough of a marriage in that regard. But I know a lot of people that, particularly if you don't have the right support system, even when you go into education, if you're thinking as a coach, and sometimes we get left out in islands on our own, and that's not good either.
No, sink or swim.
Exactly.
Now, you got started in college, so I would imagine, I'm a ballpark your age, you're anywhere between 18 to 22 at that point, right?
Yes.
So I can remember when I started my career, I was coaching girls, and I was a 22-year-old, and so the oldest girl in the program was like 18 or 19. And I knew that I was going to have to, special is not the word, but there was going to have to be a different approach that I was going to have to take from a communication standpoint. I couldn't come in there ruling like I'm 10 years older than them.
Sure.
How'd you do it? Because y'all are basically the same age.
Well, yeah, and a lot of that's difficult, but I didn't focus on on trying to find my platform or anything like that, because I was working around some fantastic basketball minds and coaches, and I just tried to be, hey, what do you need me to be?
Right.
Day in and day out. And then the second thing is, I just really tried to keep my mouth shut and listen a lot and learn. Yeah. And like I said, some great guys to be able to learn from: Todd Thurman, Mo Wilson, some of those guys that were involved in that Southern Nazarene program that I think highly of, both their as men and as their basketball IQ.
For real. I always tell the kids, I say, hey, man, you may not have a situation where somebody comes and says, hey, young fella, I'm getting ready to teach you something. Watch me. But there's still an opportunity for you to be watching and paying attention. Did you have that, come here, young fella, let me show you moments, or did you just have to interpret and analyze everything for yourself?
I was really, really blessed that I had guys like that were willing to take me under their wing, show me moments like that.
Sure.
But it was behind the scenes, and being able to say, hey, now when this happened, this is why we did this, and starting to learn to analyze and understand the game at a higher level. As a high school player and as a college athlete, you play. I grew up, and a lot of kids do, very reactionary. And
wait till something happens before we do something.
Exactly. And now it's as I got into coaching and as I got further in my college basketball career, it was all about manipulation of the parts and learning how to manipulate the game to make it happen in a way in a fashion that you want it to happen and that you've planned for it to happen.
Just how much teaching is necessary still at the college level from a fundamental standpoint? Because I know a lot of times we get players, we think that they know some things that they don't yet, and so we're having to go back to the basics. Is there a lot of that going on at that level?
Absolutely, because collegiately, so much is done off of when you're recruiting a kid, you're recruiting off of measurables, you're recruiting off of athleticism, and you see what could be, and then you're hoping that you're able to make it work in what you want it to be, or you're hoping that you can grow it into what you want it to be at times. Not every kid is that way, but you definitely recruit some of those. So there's a lot of times that you've had to have kids that you had to break down and strip down of habits that were formed in high school or AAU or what have you, and try to be able to incorporate them into a higher level.
How long was your college stint as a coach before it was time for you to get at the high school level as a head guy?
I was there at SNU in that capacity for 2 years, and then went to Western Heights.
You're in the driver's seat now, right?
Well, no, actually, I went. I decided. I got some great advice at that point in time, and things were different. Like again, I'm an old guy, but things were different a little bit back then. It was not. I think so many times today, young coaches want to skip steps.
Yes.
And they want to be a high school head assistant, or they want to go be a college GA. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but if you want to run a program, you've got to understand how to be able to run a program from the ground up. And one of the things that some of my mentors told me, they said, listen, you need to work yourself from the ground up. So I did. I had a couple opportunities to be able to get into, go straight from the collegiate scene into being a high school assistant. But I took a middle school job,
okay.
And it's been something that has been important to me, even as I hire people going forward. I want people that aren't afraid to take the steps, because I know in that case they're going to be quality coaches. But I was a middle school coach for a couple of years, and then worked my way up. I was a freshman coach my third year, and then my fourth year there, I was the head coach at Western Heights for the next 4 years. I followed Mark Wilson. I got to work under Mark Wilson, who you're probably familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
Longtime Ardmore coach and Western Heights coach. Mark was a great guy to be able to learn from and watch and try to emulate. He's so important in our game in the high school basketball.
That's a fact.
In our state, and that was a really good opportunity for me.
How was it? Was it more excitement or nerves at all when you first got that gig to be a head coach? Because now it's all on you.
Thinking back, it was a lot of. I was pretty naive.
Yeah, sure. Same.
You're never ready for your first head job. I don't care.
Quite.
I don't care where you're at, what you're doing. You're never ready, and there is some learning on the job. And I was fortunate that I had some people there that thought highly of what could possibly be with me, because I made mistakes too, and just trying to work yourself through that. But I was really, really naive, wide-eyed. I was a guy that thought early on, my first couple of years, that the more active I am, the more I'm coaching.
Yeah.
Right?
You're animated.
Exactly. And that's changed over the years. But it's one of those things where you live and learn as you go forward about really what's important in the game, and I'm not. What my guys are doing on the floor, that's important to the game.
Were you pretty receptive to information at that time?
I think I was. I like to think that I was.
Right.
It was one of those things too, though, where you're a young guy and you're trying to compete at that point in time on a 5A level. We had some good teams there.
Oh, yeah.
Those 4 years that I was head coach at Western Heights, and so we're competing to try to to do some things that program had never done before, and so there is a little bit of trying to break into the good old boys club. Yes, in a way as well. Mm-hmm. But it really
paying those dues
100%, and for good reason. But I was super young, and I looked super young when I got that first job, and I was fortunate because a lot of people don't always get that kind of a first job.
Sure.
Your first job can oftentimes break you.
It can.
It can ruin your opportunities as a head coach, and I was fortunate that I was there at the right time at the right place, and it led to some really good opportunities.
What were those 4 seasons like? Were you able to achieve some success that you were pretty satisfied with?
We were. And you always want to achieve more.
Absolutely.
And you always wish that you could have done more for your young men. So there's both. Because if you don't win a state title everybody's going to be disappointed every year except for one team in some way, shape, or form. And with us, we did some things there that we were really proud of. We won a conference title there, which was a really tough. At that point in time, the Suburban Conference was loaded with great 5A teams and great 5A coaches.
For real. Some
of the best coaches that I've ever competed against was during my 4 years at Western Heights, bar none. I don't care, collegiate. As a 6A coach, there were some outstanding men and some outstanding coaches that I got to compete against and sharpen my wits against every night. But we were able to be the first team to ever win 20 games at Western Heights.
20 wins in a season is tough, Coach.
It was, and you think about some of those things. Like now, I go to Edmond, and 20 wins is kind of almost an expectation.
Yeah.
but to be honest with you, back then, I mean, for us, that was kind of like a mirage.
Sure.
And to get our guys and be able to compete at that level and have multiple college athletes during that time, because figuring out that education is important and challenging themselves to be better men and to achieve some opportunities was a highlight of mine. I'm still very, very close to a lot of my Western Heights guys.
See, that's what a wise guy told me once. He's like, listen, that's the true measurement of how good of a coach you are. If you still maintain contact with your players, even after they can't do anything for you anymore. They've graduated, they've grown and everything, and y'all still stay in touch. I think that's awesome. Was there a moment during your Western Heights stint where you started to see a young Shane Cowherd coming up on your staff? And were you able to give him what you received from your mentors and guys that gave you tutelage on your way up?
I had a guy that was working with me there that's now a head coach, and he was one of, I actually had two guys on that staff that became head coaches, and I've been blessed. I've had some of the best assistants in the state, and many of them have gone on to become head coaches as a result. But definitely one of my good friends there that really helped me a lot, even in learning Oklahoma, because I came from Michigan. I understood college basketball. I understood that scene. I'm going down to Western Heights. Western Heights is a 5A school, but I didn't really always understand how important small-town Oklahoma was to our state, to be honest with you, and the great basketball that's played there. So I had an assistant on that staff named Kenny Doherty.
There you go.
And Kenny is the head coach up north of here, and he was a great resource for understanding the history of our towns, the programs in the state, and I learned a lot from him. But hopefully he was able to get something as well from working together with me, and he's had some success, and he's had some good teams the last couple of years. I'm pretty proud of him.
Coming out from under the Cowherd tree.
I don't know about that. I've just had really good guys.
I got you, and that counts for something. I got two more high school related questions, and then we'll move on to the next chapter. But delegation. I can remember early on in my first stint as a head coach, I wanted to do everything. I wanted to have my imprint on everything. And I didn't realize till a couple of years later that that's possible to have your imprint and your influence on every department of your program without necessarily running point on everything in your program. Did you ever struggle with delegating responsibilities to your coaches?
Horribly.
Really?
Horribly. When I started off at Western Heights, of course,
Sure.
From being in that conference and stuff, you don't have the same amount of assistants.
No.
When I was at Heights, I had two other guys for the entire program.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where I did a lot just myself. You had guys that were maybe teaching at other buildings as well, so they weren't always able to get to practice at a certain time when you're able to be at practice and things of that nature. So I just got in the habit of trying to do everything myself. When you're a really young coach, you can kind of do that. You can burn the candle at both ends, but you can't do it for very long and be ultimately successful.
Right.
And it really wasn't until I got to Edmond and I started trying to do that in year one at Edmond, and I felt myself being basically sucked under. Like this thing is going to swallow me up.
You're running out of gas?
Yeah, and just not, the scope and the magnitude of running a quality 6A basketball program, all that's involved. I went from Western Heights where there wasn't a whole lot of parent input or kind of being at a booster club meeting or handling this or handling that. It was basically we're going to go out, we're going to practice basketball, and we're going to try to win games. In Edmond, it's a whole lot more than that.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I kind of got swallow it up. And it was after that I learned to really trust my guys and give them specific things that they feel good about, that they are experts in. And that has made our program so much more successful as a result of me taking more of a back seat and allowing my guys to be able to show their expertise.
And there's a lot of trust that goes into that too.
Sure.
And trust doesn't come easy, man.
It isn't, but trust is kind of a blind step. Sure. People say you earn trust, and you do, but to fully trust, it's still sort of a blind step because you don't really know what's going to happen. And when I learned to kind of let go of that fear of control, right? To be able to allow my guys to be able to do what they do best, then our program really exploded and flourished.
Before we transition to Edmond Memorial, where you've been holding down the fort for quite some time, if you could give me some differences in your experiences between coaching at the college level and coaching at the high school level.
Well, first of all, travel.
Yeah,
the travel is
that's taxing, isn't it?
That's far and above the biggest change. But the other thing is being able to have your guys, a college schedule. Your guys may have gone to 2 classes that day.
Yeah,
they're fresh as a daisy mentally, physically. They can go through the rigors of a quality, a couple hour practice collegiately, work on a lot of skill development on the college ranks because you have more bodies to be able to do some of those things effectively. Whereas maybe if I'm a small town Oklahoma high school coach, it's me and maybe one other guy. And so how do you then try to a program of 25 kids? How do you then effectively try to really grow their games like you could on, say, a staff of 8 or 9,
Sure.
And that totally changes the landscape. So I think that's one of the biggest things. And then the other thing is obviously a collegiate program are kids that have been selected. You want them there for a reason. Either you want them there for their talent, or you want them there for their if you're giving them a partial scholarship, you want them there for their enrollment dollars.
That's right.
And
business.
100%. And in high school, it's every Jim, Jack, and Joe that walks through that door and
you don't get the pick of the litter.
No, and they may not be talented, but they may be willing, and you got to find ways to be able to incorporate their skill sets into what can make the program successful. And it may not always be in what they're doing with a basketball. And whereas in the collegiate ranks, you're not messing with some of those things.
Sure. You got your program kids at the high school level,
Sure.
right? Maybe not so many of them at the college level. Okay, so in what year was it that you made the transition from Western Heights to Edmond Memorial?
2006.
2006.
Yep.
How did that opportunity come about? Did it find you, or did you go get it?
You know what? It really found me. It's kind of a funny story, and my old AD and Edmond legend Mike De La Garza gives me crap about it all the time, because it was a situation where I happened to be once again in the right place at the right time. Edmond Santa Fe was open that year as well. I had applied for Edmond Santa Fe. I thought that I had a chance to be able to pull an interview from there. I didn't. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
And so I'm like, all right. No big deal. I love where I'm at Western Heights. I truly loved my kids, and I loved being there.
You ready to gear up for another go-round now?
That was it. And when this happened, when it all took place, is actually going to happen at a team camp. But I had a college coach at that point in time that I respected highly. His name was Doug Tolan. You're probably familiar with Coach Tolan, legendary high school coach here and then college coach in the state. And Coach was at OBU, and at that point in time, and he was close to Mike De La Garza. And De La Garza was going through apps because his job was open, and he didn't feel like he had the apps for Edmond Memorial that he really wanted. So he called some people that he was connected with, that he trusted, and Coach Tolan said, and I'm thankful for this every day. The story, at least from what I understand,
right,
is
the way it was reported to you.
Exactly. Coach Tolan told him, he said, "Listen, you need to call this guy at Western Heights. I think that he's just what you're looking for." So I'm very, very thankful for that. The funny thing is Edmond Memorial called me, and I'm basically like, thank you, but no thank you.
Really?
And once again, naive and dumb, I guess. But
well, let me see if I can let you off the hook there. Was it because you had like mentally gotten locked back into Western Heights?
There was a lot of that,
Okay.
and I truly loved it. I loved being at Western Heights. Loved it with a passion. Loved my kids.
For sure.
So there was that. We were at team camp at OU, and when all this took place, but Coach Tolan called me and said, "Listen, I'm not telling you to take the job, but I'm telling you if you don't go to the interview, it's a mistake."
Yep.
So I'm like, all right, I'll go to the interview. I go to the interview. My wife and I talked about it. It was one of those things. I turned down a number of interviews at that point in time in my career for other high school jobs just because they had called me, because it wasn't a good fit. Didn't really care about it. Loved where I was at once again. And but we talked about it, said, all right, let's just go. We don't plan on moving. We don't want to move, but we'll go do have you go do the interview. I went and did the interview. As soon as I got done with the interview, I called my wife and said, I really want this job. The principal there, the AD there, at that point in time that I was able to work with on site, really sold me on what Edmond Memorial particularly was, and I fell in love with the thought of being there. Luck as it would be, I get offered the job. I finally accept it, and then it's been a fairy tale for my family and myself since I've been there.
Man, isn't it ironic how the process goes? Because I would imagine you've got your fair share of interview experience under your belt. It's like when you send for something, you're selling you, but when they call you, it sounds like they were selling them to you, and you came in maybe but left a believer. Is that fair to?
There was some of that. It really was. Yeah, there definitely was some of that. But the more I got into the interview, the more I'm like, my goodness, I need to sell myself. Like, I need to figure out how to get this job.
Yeah.
So it was, there's definitely that. But one of the things there, you've been in different things that might all of a sudden just click and make it like it just feels right. My marriage to my wife, when I met her and fell in love with her, it was like, this feels right. This is right. And Edmond Memorial was very much the same thing for me, and I was devastated to leave. It's something I'm not ashamed of, but I look back and I laugh a little bit at myself because I went to the school board meeting at Western Heights when they read my resignation and stood up, addressed the board, thanked them for the opportunities, and wept like a baby.
Man.
Because that place meant so much to me.
Was that harder? Or was talking to you guys harder? And the reason I ask that is because I've left some jobs to take others, but I've never left a program that I was running to move on to greener pastures. And I'm always wondering, will the players understand? How was it for you when you broke it down to them?
It was terrible. It was because
just as bad as the board meeting.
It was, more so I think, because the board meeting is. It's focused on me and the opportunities they had given me. So there was personal in that regard, but telling your kids that you've invested in and you spend time with and you are trying to build and you are trying to help manufacture for them what their hopes and dreams are.
Right.
That, hey, I need to leave and I need to go take this opportunity. That was devastatingly hard. I cried all the way because, once again, I took the job. I left OU team camp. Kids didn't really know why, but they knew that something was up because I don't ever leave.
Right, that's different.
Left them with an assistant. Came back to OU, balled all the way there because I knew what was coming up. Talked to the kids, cried, obviously because it was so tough for me. And there was some of those boys that will even tell you today, that were on that group that they were pretty upset with me, and I understand that, and I don't blame them. I think the older you get in life, the more you understand that this wasn't necessarily even a basketball choice that I made. It's worked out in the most amazing ways and with the most amazing blessings from God for me to be able to go to Memorial. But it was a family choice. It was a better opportunity for my kids in education. It was a better opportunity for my wife in the classroom as well. She's also a teacher.
Family of educators right there.
100%. And that was really the impetus behind it, and it's been fantastic 14 years.
How was that first season? I would imagine you went into it excited as ever, ready to make a mark and see what this 6A thing's all about, man. How was it?
It was one of those things where I told them in the interview, or not in the interview after that, I kind of got wind that I was looking good, that I was going to get that job.
Okay.
Edmond had, and we still do host a huge summer league on this side of the state, and so they were still doing it there. So I went up to go watch those kids play, and I told the AD afterwards. He knew I'd gone up and watched, and he asked me, and I was honest. I said, my kids at Western Heights would beat them right now, and that wasn't necessarily a real popular statement.
How'd they go over?
But it was I'm an honest guy. I'm going to call it the way I see it. And,
sure.
And that first year was tough. It was tough because the coach had been there for 8 years before me. Mm-hmm. Mike DeLagar's the legend of Edmond, was there for 22 years. Mm-hmm. He's the AD now. The next coach had been there for 8 years, Rob Hunt. He had a lot of success. He goes into the ministry. And so now there's me. So there's been, when I got hired, I'm the third coach in 30 years at Edmond Memorial. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of things that I was bringing to the table that I wanted to do a little bit differently. Change is hard, particularly in a basketball mecca like Edmond is. Basketball is very, very important in our city. And some of those changes didn't go over real well. I had a lot of parents that weren't real happy with me. And I learned real quickly the political side of high school basketball.
And it's whether this is fair or not, I'm gonna say it anyway. But we always hear chirping throughout the basketball community in terms of which environments are the roughest ones to deal with from a political standpoint. And it's one of those things to where I try and empathize. 'Cause I'm not a parent, but I know that everybody that's a parent, they love their babies. So I try to keep that in perspective. But how do you deal with it today? Because you've been there for 14 seasons, right? You've had a lot of success, so I don't think anybody can question whether or not you know what you're doing. But how often do you have to remind somebody that, hey, I know a thing or two about what I'm doing here?
It doesn't matter. None of that matters. Success doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Whether I know what I'm doing or not doesn't necessarily matter when you're talking about somebody's kid. Because their kid is the single most important thing to them. And, it's a crazy thing. I'm in a situation, at Edmond Memorial where there's a kid there at Edmond Memorial that I love more than any other kid in the entire school. And that's my son.
There you go.
My son's a senior, going to be a senior here at Edmond Memorial. And there's nothing more that he would love than to be able to wear that jersey and play for me, especially with my history and the family's history in basketball. And the bottom line was my son wasn't talented enough to play at Edmond Memorial. That's okay, but trying to get another parent to see that, like that story right there, I cut my own kid.
I had no idea about that.
Okay, that's tough. I'm not telling you that as a parent, when I went home at night, that decision didn't agonize me. It agonized me as a coach. There's not ever a kid that I cut that I'm happy about cutting.
Right.
And no matter their talent level. But even today, the fact that I cut my own kid, that doesn't matter to John Smith, whose son is going through it right now. Mm-hmm. Later on when things cool off a little bit, maybe that's something that they think about and they're like, well, at least he's fair and he's consistent across the board. But in the moment, it doesn't matter.
Oh, man. Oh, dog. Now, when did your son graduate?
He's going to graduate this year. So this is his senior year. So I'm hoping that we have a halfway normal opportunity for him to have a senior year.
Would you say whenever you were coaching your son, even whether it was short-lived or not, did you ever find yourself in a bind in terms of, okay, how hard do I need to get on him versus maybe I need to lighten up a little bit? You know what I mean? Did you ever find that balance between doing too much or not doing enough?
I don't know if I ever found it. Uh-huh. My rationale was is that I decided early on that I was never going to push him.
Gotcha.
Athletically. I was going to push him as far as character. I was going to push him academically. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to push him athletically. It needed to be something that he wanted, that he desired, and that he came to me and he wanted for that to happen. That never really materialized like that. And as a result, it was pretty easy to be able to see that basketball wasn't going to be his path in life, and that's okay.
Right.
You know,
so much more you can do out here.
Oh my goodness, he's exceptionally talented in so many other areas. Far more than he gets it from his mom, thank goodness. Far more than myself, you know, and I'm so proud of that, and I'm proud of him. But that was one of the best things that I did as a dad, I believe to this day, was that I didn't push him in things that mattered to me. I let him push himself in things that mattered to him. You know, the things that mattered to me that are non-negotiables, like I said, are character, being a man, you know, your faith, those things those are non-negotiables about, hey, go about your business the right way and do those things. But as far as the choices of what you want to do, make yourself happy and chase your dreams, but chase them with a lot of fervor and a lot of passion. Because if you can't do that, you probably don't need to be doing it.
Mm-hmm. If you're gonna do it all the way.
100%.
I like that. Last parental question. Did you always feel supported by your administration and backed up whenever you would get into these quarrels, for lack of a better term, with parents that weren't understanding your vision?
Well, one of the things that saved my butt, to be honest with you, at Edmond Memorial was working for a boss who had been in my shoes, in Mike De La Garza, who had faced the fires
right.
In that particular seat.
Yep.
Because even in Edmond, every school is different. And they have different nuances about even how their parent, situations work. But he was really good in helping navigate me through some of those, and then, quietly having my back to be able to let me have the time to build and show what we have been able to put together. And I'm forever indebted to him. He's still a mentor of mine. We'll still talk. He'll still call me after a game and tell me everything that I'm doing wrong and that I need to do more shooting drills.
Shooting drill. Isn't it a trip how the game has evolved, though? Because I can remember once upon a time when the dunk was sexy and shooting was a luxury, but now it's become a necessity. It's like you got to have it. But talk to me about getting to the mountaintop, because your program has been one in my years of watching basketball, and I graduated high school in 2007, and so I've been sort of staying connected ever since. But your program is one of them that I'm always counting on still being alive when it's state tournament time. And you've won 2 state titles, right? And you've lost 1. Talk about the highs and the lows and the ebbs and the flows of those particular seasons, man. Did you know going into those state championship seasons that, hey, man, we got a team that got a chance to do it?
Most of the time I think that you really do. In 2011, right, and I took once again from my mentor, Mike De La Garza. He thought I was crazy. But everything that year, I felt really, really good about our talent. I knew that they fit really well together.
Right.
And we had some exceptional players on that team. But that's where it's always at. It's the Jimmies and the Joes.
Right.
But we were very focused on being gold ball centric. We broke on gold ball. I put the gold ball on our nameplates, in our lockers. Everything was about the gold ball. When we referenced something, it was about what's going to, we're doing this because we're trying to get here to this. And sometimes I think we talk about some things like that, but that year was different. And as a result, we go through that year. We probably shouldn't have. We lost 1 game. Jordan Woodard, pretty stinking good player, had a 104-degree temp, and we lost to Santa Fe. We played them 4 times that year, the Josh Richardson team.
Ooh, yeah, I remember that.
And they were loaded good. Okay. Some great battles. We beat them 3 times. We lost to them that 1 game when Jordan was sick. Otherwise, I think we would have run the table. And then the following year, we go and we're silver ball. Graduated some really good ones, but we're super talented again right there. And one of the most probably haunting games of my basketball career, we lost to a really, really good Tulsa Union squad that had, and on that one, they had, Jeffrey Meade, I think, was a sophomore maybe in that team. They were like
Young
all of them were like 6'6", 6'7" across the board, and
from 3 to 5, they were tough.
Yeah, they were man, they were long. But we had a lead at halftime. But in that first half, we were in all kinds of foul trouble. James Woodard was on the bench in foul trouble. Jordan Woodard was on the bench in foul trouble. Another starter had a severely sprained ankle. And was basically half of himself that game. So we were in a lot of trouble. We weren't necessarily as deep as the year before. And we were trying to be a little, I guess the last 2 minutes of that half, we tried to be very particular with our shot selection, you know.
What a common fan would look at as stalling.
Yes, yes.
They don't understand it, though.
Well, the problem was we go into the second half, and Union goes to their long 1-3-1 half-court zone trap.
And it's a tough thing to deal with, man.
Yeah. Well, they were really good. They were really long. And our guys, because of, those guys sitting, for so long in that second quarter in foul trouble, and then just kind of the shift of the end of the half of us just kind of holding on to a lead rather than being able to really extend and play, we got very, very, very passive. And the next thing you know, they take the lead. It's kind of nip and tuck, and Jordan Woodard misses about a 32-footer at the buzzer, goes in and out, and we lose. And then the next year, we're loaded with talent again, easily the most talented team in the state. Should have won it. Did win it, but had to win it on a last-second tip-in by Jordan to beat Midwest, a scrappy, talented, guard-heavy Midwest City team.
Oh, yeah. Now, is that the year where they got that 5-second inbound violation and you guys got the possession back?
No, actually, Jordan stole the inbounds pass.
Okay, stole that one.
7.2 seconds left. They've got to go the length of the floor. We had used our last timeout, and the plan was we wanted them to try to basically, we were trying to draw an offensive foul off of their screening because we knew it was going to turn into a free throw game.
Right.
We didn't feel like the time situation was very conducive for us. If you watch the 7.2 seconds, Aaron Young, another college basketball player,
man, quality,
great kid, great young man. So proud of him and what he is today. But he worked for me for the last couple of years, then went to Germany this past year to play again. But with all of that, he blows himself up on a screen to take a charge, and in that we had scouted Midwest City in the same situation against PCO. 3 straight possessions. We kind of knew where the inbounder was going to go with the ball. We had talked about it in the timeout. And the kid had turned the ball over at that point in time a couple different times against PCO. I think 3 of the 5 ending possessions against PCO the night before. And Jordan read it, makes an unbelievable steal. What a lot of people don't know is that Jordan was playing on a torn hamstring that night.
Man, 104 attempt one time. Now he's got a bad wheel the other night.
Passes the ball into his into a teammate who misses basically a point blank layup, and we give him a hard time, Tyler, a little bit of a hard time for missing that layup. But then what he does in the next half of a second is probably one of the most incredible things. He basically wins a fist fight to get that offensive rebound back. Somehow, and all of this is happening in 7.2 seconds, he gets it back up on the rim, misses again, but Jordan Woodard comes out of nowhere, tips it in as the buzzer sounds. One of the most unbelievable high school, I don't care, college, high school, one of the most unbelievable basketball moments I've ever seen.
I mean, and it's like, how storybook is that? Because we all daydream or even dream when we go to sleep for the night of just that counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, and you're hitting a fall away jumper or something like that. But in this case, you get to live it, man.
Oh, that young man had more moments like that. I mean, the kid lost 3 games his entire high school career. I mean, he just knew how to win. And one of the things that I know that I'm supposed to be answering the questions
go for it. You got it, man.
That 7.2 seconds, one of the things that just amazes me still in that moment, because we were so talented.
Yeah.
And we were the group to beat. Midwest City's the upstart.
Sure.
They're kind of the media darling because nobody expects them to win that game. And here we are, we're going to lose. And at 7.2 seconds left, and knowing that we're out of timeouts, knowing that Jordan is a shell of himself, he can't move. Right. There was so much there that I thought, when they came to the bench, that I was going to have to be, rah man, or we're still in this, type of
you
speech.
had to give them some positivity.
And when they came to the bench, it was business. It was, this is what we're going to do. They were locked in. Okay, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. This is going to happen. They're going to do this. We're going to win this game. And, it sounds cliche and it sounds like it's too good to be true, but with that particular situation, it truly happened. And it's one of the most amazing moments of my life.
Would you say, Coach, that you had more talent or more experience with that group, or did you have that ultimate combination of both?
I think it was both. Obviously, on that particular team, we had 3 guys that were Division I college basketball players, 2 guys that played in Final Fours.
There you go.
So the talent was obvious, and we should have been in that game, and we should have won it.
Right.
But even with the best of programs and the best of teams in any given year, you're going to have adversity.
Sure.
And losing our floor general in Jordan to not be able to be what he needed to be able to be in that game kind of set us off kilter. And it really screwed with our chemistry. And what a lot of people don't remember is that Jordan had torn his hamstring like in the 3rd game of the season. And he'd sat out all the way until I think he played the last 3 regular season games and then playoffs. So he didn't have
quite some time, man.
Yes, and it was a bad tear. And so in that situation, and he plus this is a kid that was already signed and sealed to go to OU. I'm not about ready to ruin his career, and try to get him to do something that he shouldn't. But when it popped again the night before that, against Owasso, which was a double OT game.
Oh man!
And Aaron sticks a game-winning 3 in that game again. Shake Milton was on that team.
God, that was a hell of a group.
Yeah, they were really talented, but it was a team like going back to what I was saying, that they were. You knew that they should win. That they were that kind of talent, but that adversity that they got hit with. One of the kids that I'm most proud of, even on that whole entire team, was Tyler Holcomb, the kid I said missed the bunny. Mm-hmm. He played the whole entire basketball season, and I kid you not, and most of the time this wouldn't ever be able to take place, but he had stress fractures in both feet from football. He was our football quarterback.
That's unheard of. Both feet.
Both feet.
Eesh.
He got one in what basically was a high ankle sprain. It turned into a stress fracture,
right.
And he was one of our better football players, and they needed him on the field. He came back, shouldn't have probably played, did, and then broke his other foot. So he goes into basketball season. And it's one of those things where he's a talented kid. Everybody knew who Tyler was. He's a 6'5" forward. He's a good player. And it was one of those things where he and his parents went to the doctor. The doctor said, "Listen, the only way it's going to fix, you got to be off your feet. You're going to miss the basketball season."
Ooh.
He didn't want that.
I didn't want to hear that.
And so he said, "Can I play with the pain? Is it going to make it any worse?" With a stress fracture, the doctor said, "Probably not. It's something we'll check, but if you can handle the pain, okay." So Tyler practiced sparingly. He was there mentally,
sure,
but sparingly. And so that kid that wins that rebound is doing it off of 2 broken feet. Jordan's getting the tip off of a torn hamstring. There was a lot of adversity, and I think that's one of the things that I'm most proud about that group is not their basketball talent, but was the fact that they were able to take the pressures of that talent and the expectations of that talent, and then face the adversity that came physically as well, and still found a way to be able to make a miracle happen.
Man, it sounds like you had some dogs, as we like to use in the coaching world. Let me ask you this though: I would imagine there are some differences between a team that is supposed to win it versus a team that maybe wasn't supposed to win it, and sure. you've won it with both types of teams. What were the pressures like, or did you feel any in both of those experiences?
I think that That second one, I felt the pressure. It was almost a relief when we won.
It was over. Yeah.
The first one, I felt so good about that group, and I thought, I don't think that everybody else thought that we were going to win, but I really had a good feeling about that group. And when they won,
a favorable spot to be in.
Sure, absolutely. There wasn't that kind of a pressure. One of the best things that happened to us that year, in the 2011 team, was when Jordan missed that game, that one game that we lost to Santa Fe in Josh Richardson's group, because we didn't go into playoffs undefeated. If we'd have had that, albatross hanging over us, we may have felt things a little bit differently. Maybe the pressure's a little bit more, but that group goes in, and when they won it, I was just sitting back and basking and watching my guys experience just the highest of highs in a high school setting, right?
Taking it in.
The second one was like, oh, I can't believe this just happened, but it did. Great, type of thing.
What happens going into the next season after you've won one? I mean, I think some minds would think, okay, they've gotten a taste of it. Now they're going to get greedy. They want it again and again and again. And we would like to think that that's true all the time. But the fact of the matter is there's a flip side to that coin. And sometimes they get full and say, hey, man, we're the champs, baby. We're gonna coast through the regular season and then just flip that switch when it's February. Did you battle any of that complacency coming off of either one of those state title runs?
I think a little bit in 2012, but not just a ton. And part of that was because we had great kids that were very culturally driven. Guys, like a James Woodard, who was just, I still tell people this today. James Woodard is, he was obviously he's a great college basketball player at the University of Tulsa. Now he's playing overseas and he's doing amazing things overseas. But he was the single best practice player I've ever had.
Man.
Well, when your best player comes into practice and he is just the same dude every day, and it is literally, I'm here to get better. I'm here to work. And that drives the ship.
It does.
So being blessed to have had a guy like that in 2012, we didn't have to fight a lot of the complacency. And then, 2013, because we lost in the title game, it was back to that full hunger, right?
Yeah.
Let's devour. So I didn't have to deal with that as much because of great leadership from incredible players.
You had an extension of a coach on that floor, it sounds like. What about that consolation speech? When after you get to the final dance, you fall short, you go in that dressing room, you look in those guys in the eyes. For some of them, that's it. They may not ever play this game again in an organized fashion. What do you say to that group?
It doesn't matter if you lose in the state championship game or you lose in the first game of regionals. If it's your last game, that's the single hardest locker room to be in, because that those kids have invested, and some kids have invested daily and hours after hour after hour and maybe never saw the floor.
Sure.
But that program still meant something to them, and now that chapter of their life is gone and they'll never get it back, like you said. One of the things that I always, and I try not to be a last speech of the year kind of guy.
Yeah.
I want them to understand as we go through how much I appreciate their sacrifices, how much I appreciate them protecting their culture.
Yes.
And so that last game, no matter how it ends for us, if it's a loss, there's usually some sorrow, right? There's pain, and there should be. Otherwise, it didn't mean enough to you.
Oh, yeah.
And find something else to do. Go play checkers.
Yeah, that's a hard one to take when you're dealing with that one.
Yes,
Ooh.
and I've been fortunate that I haven't had very many of those in my career. In fact, I don't think I really have. I've only had one in 20 or 18 years of being a head coach. So it's one of those things that with me it's a celebration of, hey, look what we have been able to do together for X amount of years, and then allow those guys the opportunity to be able to talk about what's been important to them about their culture, about case in point this year. we win area, beat a really good Lawton team to go into the state tournament.
And they were about as long as that Union team
Yes,
that you were talking about a couple years ago.
They're very athletic, very very talented group. We walk into as coaches, we met outside, we talked a little bit. We walk into the locker room. I fully expected a little bit of exuberance, bouncing around,
right.
The excitement of it. And we walked in, and our guys, the one more week of practice, coach. That was the message. That was what our guys were saying. That's what they were excited about. Now, obviously, it means something different to them. But the culture has driven now at this point in time to where they understand that's the goal. We want one more week of practice. We want one more week to be able to get better, one more week to go through a scout, one more week to work on analytics. And that has been truly one of the earmarks of our program.
Now, granted, everybody's season fell short in a not so flattering fashion due to COVID-19 and things like that. But ordinarily, how long do you decompress after the run is over? How long are you just sitting and being a human being before you get back in the saddle in the spring?
Not very long.
Not very long.
No, usually it's the month of. It's basically the week of spring break.
Right.
And then because of the fact that, at Memorial, we host a huge summer league.
Yes, you do.
We have a number of basketball camps that we also host. And so you're in full mode there. It's not the same necessarily as a season grind and ripping film and working on tendencies and analytics and things like that. But it definitely has... you don't get to totally get away. So I tell people all the time that basically I work from August to July. I take July off, and July is absolutely non-basketball. This year being a little bit different because of COVID,
right.
But usually July is I'm not involved. I want the kids away from the gym. If they're working on their own or they're
Sure.
working with AAU programs, then great. But I want them to be a kid. I want them to experience some summer. That's important. We forget that they're not little basketball factories.
Little basketball fact. That's epic right there. Did it take a minute? Did you have to learn how to do that, or was it relatively easy?
I think that came with some maturity.
Yeah.
Because as a young guy, you just want to be in the gym working all the time, right? Mm-hmm. In our state, obviously, we have regulations that keep that from happening.
Sure.
Some schools follow it differently than others. Mm-hmm. But I've always been at places where that was really important to follow the rules. But even when that's happening, usually as a young coach, you're going to a clinic or you're trying to go watch. This college group maybe they're getting some extended practices because they're going to go do an overseas trip. So you're trying to learn from other people, right? You're trying to. One of the things that's super, super important, the best advice that I could ever give a young coach is basketball is not that important. And I know that sounds crazy, but my family, they're the most important thing.
Right.
And when I hire coaches, and I have hired some unbelievable men to work with me over the years and have been very fortunate, but I tell them all the time, listen, family and what you do with your family time is vital.
Yeah. You
have to have that. We're in a job situation where, and this is no knock on marriages that don't last, but the bottom line is we're in a job position that's high stress, it's high time consuming.
Oh, yeah.
And if we're not investing back in our families, then we drift away.
Yeah,
and
something's gonna give.
100%. And so one of the things with me, July is I like to say that I'm giving it to my family,
right,
my time, but really I'm just soaking all of them up as much as I possibly can because I don't always get the opportunity in the other times of the year.
What are some of your hobbies outside of anything basketball related? Are there any for Coach Cowherd?
To be honest with you, very, very little.
Very little.
I don't golf because,
right.
That's a time consuming function,
a
lot of guys in our profession do, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's okay. A lot of guys in our profession fish, and I wish maybe that I had that kind of patience, but it really comes down to it that my job takes so much basketball time,
right,
that I want to invest my time back into my wife and kids, and really they are my hobby, and it as a result, it has been far better for me in that regard. But, outside of that, what do we do together with my family? I enjoy watching, the occasional movie or, just watching my kids. You don't get that chance for very long. So
when the time is gone, it's gone. Right?
It is.
My dad says, once you're growing forever.
It's exactly right.
He said it's a life sentence. I said, dang.
Some of us try to forget that, but it doesn't work very well.
No. Now I got a couple more basketball things to throw at you, Coach, because I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Running a program versus coaching basketball. Now I know you understand the difference in that, and I'm learning the difference in that too. When it comes to all the nuances and the layers of the program at Edmond Memorial, what all do you have to do that you're responsible for? A regular day on the job for Coach Cowherd looks like what?
Well, in Edmond, and I try to hold this standard myself before I came to Edmond, but in Edmond it's really important that you're a great teacher. First and foremost, they expect you. Education in Edmond is huge, and as a result, you have to be a great teacher. And I'm not a guy that gets to sit in a gym during a PE class. I teach. I have a full schedule, and there's anything wrong with guys that have been able to figure out ways to be able to get a PE job in the state, because they're like gold and they never come up, right?
Oh my gosh, because folks aren't leaving those.
No,
I'm a PE guy.
That's a lifetime commitment right there.
What do you teach, Coach?
World history and English.
There you go.
Just world. I mean, I'm a U.S. I can teach all the histories, but I teach world at Memorial, and I was my degrees are in history and English. So, but with me, that's where the day starts. But there's so much that's involved in a program of that kind of magnitude. People think that we're filthy, loaded, rich, and Edmond, and that's one of the furthest things actually from the truth.
Yeah.
Edmond is actually one of the poorer school districts in the state of Oklahoma because of what comes to us from tax dollars, because there's really no infrastructure in Edmond. It's basically it's all housing. So as a result of that and how tax dollars work and the formulas, it's not like we just get everything that we want. So figuring out fundraising with booster clubs and being able to be that kind of a liaison and know that there are going to be parents that they have access to your phone and they can blow it up at any point in time, but trying to build those relationships so that those people understand. And once again, I've been blessed with some unbelievable parents to be able to work with in Edmond that are kid first, not just even their kid, but kid first, and that allow 100% and allow for a program to be able to build. But there's the elements outside of trying to figure out bus driving and scheduling and everything that goes along with that. And then there's coaching basketball. And then
if it was only that, our jobs would be pretty easy.
Right? Yes. In a place like Edmond, you're going to deal with parental issues every year. It's not something that I have ever looked at and said, "Oh my goodness, why me?" and I can't handle this. It's kind of an expectation that, hey, this is going to happen, and as long as you are consistent and you over communicate, you're going to be in great shape most of the time, because the administration there is going to they've hired you for a reason, and they're going to try to back you for a reason. And so one of the things that I've learned and I try to get better at, sometimes I've been better at than others, is being a great communicator. Well, as you well know, being a great communicator takes time.
It does.
You're on the phone, you're on text, you're with us dealing with we've been fortunate. We've got some outstanding players year in and year out. So dealing with college recruiting, getting our guys opportunities to be able, working that network. It's nonstop. My cell phone is fairly busy.
Do you have two phones yet, Coach?
No, just one.
Just one. Coach, how hard are you to deal with after a loss? Or maybe I should ask your wife or ask one of your coworkers. Does it stay with you for very long? Do you have trouble laying it down that night?
Well, usually it's like a half a pint of ice cream later. Then I get to a good place. No,
that's not bad right there, Coach.
No, it's one of those things that I learned long ago that I don't rip and roar after a loss. If it's an effort thing, okay. If it's a mental deal, or if it's a not being paying attention to scout, those are things that I realize in that moment. Nothing I can say changes the disappointment at the moment. Now, the next day in practice,
oh yeah,
now we're hitting it. And there are different coaches that do things differently in different ways. There are some that want to deal with it right then and that night and have practice at midnight. That's not me. It's one of those things that I don't try to with our guys, and I think one of the reasons why our guys have been fairly successful. I don't usually deal with punitive. Don't get me wrong, we work. And
Sure.
we work our butts off. But it's one of those things that I want our guys to have a better understanding of the game of basketball. And so when those things happen and disappointment happens, think about the times we've been the most disappointed. I don't want to listen to reason then.
Right.
I want to lick my wounds and feel bad for myself.
Yeah, let me soak in it for me.
Yeah, and then the next day, no, I don't ever want to feel that again. So what do I need to do to change that? So I don't try to deal with punitive. I try to deal with teachable moments, and then take those moments from last night's game and say, all right, we didn't like this. You didn't like feeling this way. This is the reason why it happened, because we didn't do this. We didn't follow this part of the game plan. And scouting and analytics for us is huge. I mean, I've been fortunate. I've got a lot of guys that have spent time either as college basketball athletes as coaches, or that were college basketball coaches that are on my staff. And we have a very collegiate model for what we do with our scouting. And so, taking that approach, very mentally driven, has helped me not to be too much of an ogre immediately after games.
I like that. And that's preparation for those of your athletes that have a chance to go and play at the next level.
100%.
They won't be strangers to it. Now, conversely, let's say a big win, right? You guys, a big emotional win. Maybe you beat a team that on paper you weren't supposed to beat. Maybe you had to go beyond regulation to get it done. Or maybe you all are in the midst of a big-time winning streak and you haven't been hitting them out yet. How do you go into practice the next day? And I'm fascinated in your answer before you even give it, because I talk to my high school coach pretty much on the daily, and he always says, hey, man, I just knew when y'all were riding high. Next day of practice, I'm going to hit you in the mouth, figuratively speaking. And so that'd be one of the roughest practices just to bring us down a notch. So what does it look like for you guys?
With me, there's a lot of, I'm not a rah-rah guy.
Right.
I'm very, and I think that my guys, that's one of the things that they gravitate towards, that they start to learn and understand that I'm the same guy. We always talk about this. Be the same guy up 50 as you are down 50. I don't get too high, and I don't get too low. We celebrate success, and I hate to lose. There's nobody that hates to lose more than me. But
you just wear it a little bit better?
I try to hide it, disguise it a little bit.
Right.
But, it's one of those things that, once again, it goes back to that kind of that mental approach, in that, I will adjust the mental parts of what is needing to happen in practice more than I'll adjust the physical.
Right.
So I will try to expose them mentally, and that is one of the best things about having great young men and players that allow me to coach them. Right now I've got another really talented Division I guard. I can coach him harder than any other kid in the gym.
And I bet he wants that, doesn't he?
100%. And as a result, because of the culture that has been now put in place, that I don't even necessarily, I just have to tend the garden now. I don't have to plant it anymore.
Got you.
That garden is already in existence. It's already producing that fruit. And these guys have learned from guys ahead of them. And so that ship kind of almost, in some respects, it starts to run itself. So that, when we talk about, going into the practice that next day, even after a big win, our guys, I know that my best player is going to be the hardest working guy in the gym. And so when I pull him over and I say, listen, you see where our squads are at today. This is who I need you to go at. I need you to go at his head. I need you to embarrass him today.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm not rah-rah, and I'm not putting them through 1,000 sprints or this, that, and the other, but we're playing mental games. And, our guys like to use that phrase that, we're trying to play chess and not checkers.
Oh, yeah.
And that's really where we're at.
A tactical guy right there.
Try to be.
I love it. Here's how we'll put a bow on this thing, Coach. I ask all my guests as competitors, whether you go back into your playing history or your coaching history, I'm pretty sure you can think of at least one game. But I won't limit you to just one. But I'm pretty sure you can think of one game that you wish you could get back, and you can go back and run it back because that team got you, and you believed then just like you believe now that they shouldn't have. So if you could go to one, which one would that be?
Man, that's a great question.
I know you got more bright spots than anything, don't you?
You know what? The bright spots don't last with you.
That's right, man.
It's the ones where you screwed up,
Yeah,
or your team just wasn't ready to go. I think probably one of the things that haunts me, that game again I was saying against Union that we won the silver ball in 2012. Because I wasn't able, I called timeouts. We talked about what we needed to do. I wasn't able to get my guys out of that deer in the headlights look. And that was one of the few times that has never really been able to happen. So that one obviously sticks out because it was for the biggest prize. But then, we had a team a few years ago that got to the state tournament, lost to a loaded Broken Arrow team on a tip-in in the state quarterfinals. We should have never gotten there. I mean, we absolutely had no business being there based off of talent.
Sure.
And things just kind of worked together and clicked together right at the end of the year. We get there. That group beat a Midwest City team on their floor that they had no business beating. We get to the state tournament. We have Broken Arrow. We have them on the ropes. We're leading them all game long. And two things.
Is this the quarterfinals?
Quarterfinals.
Okay.
And they were loaded good.
Yeah.
Really good team that they had that year. But they were ranked number one all year long.
Hard to do in 6A.
100%.
And stay there.
We work on fundamentals all the time, Coach. And sometimes I'm one of those guys that I'm not new age enough, I guess, that I have a hard time trying to entertain people in practice. Like I don't want to entertain people in practice. I want guys that want to come in and aren't afraid to work.
That's right.
So I'm not a guy that when you come to my practices, I'm not pulling out 30 new drills today that we didn't do yesterday. And our guys know that it's about the repetition. It's the mastery of the little things. And we go back. We very rarely, and I think this is what most people would say about us. We very, very, very rarely beat ourselves as a result of that. Well, in this game, we had a group of guys that weren't always locked in to those little things. Okay.
Those little things become big things.
Coach, we start off at most days, just with a simple layup drill. We've got to make X amount of layups, full court layups, in X amount of time, just a couple of minutes, and would have guys that just kind of go, I'm too cool, right?
Everything's cool, man.
And I'm just being, kid gets a breakaway layup, misses a layup. They come back down, score. It's a little thing.
It always happens like that, though.
100%. It's a little thing, right?
Yeah, little thing.
But it bit us in the butt. We lose that game on a shot and a lack of a box out. Once again, the little things, something that's been preached all along. That team shouldn't have been there. A lot of people afterwards, in some aspects, they're patting you on the back saying, "Oh, coach, that was the best job you ever did. You had no business being there. That's the best coaching job I've ever seen you do."
Right.
And all I'm hung up on is the fact that we missed a breakaway layup by ourselves that we practice literally every day, and we missed a box out. Otherwise, that group of guys that shouldn't have been there, they shouldn't have been there, but it's not that they shouldn't have been there. They could have controlled the opportunity to still be there.
That's right.
And those are the type of things that I get hung up on.
Spoken like a true student of the game, Coach. Well, listen, man, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm glad that we finally were able to align our schedules and make it happen.
I appreciate you having me.
No doubt. Well wishes moving forward if we can get back to some degree of normalcy out here, and I'll catch you down the road.
Good luck, Coach.
Thank you, man. Coach.